Hello mga people of the universe. Okay, alright. Ngayong araw nga ay hindi muna tayo magre-relapse at ang gagawin muna natin ay pag-aaralan natin ang ATP.
Wow!
Today, let's talk about ATP or adenosine triphosphate. ATP is often called the energy currency of the cell because it provides the power for almost everything cells do. Structurally, ATP has three parts: adenine, a sugar called ribose, and three phosphate groups linked together. The key lies in the bonds between those phosphate groups, especially the last one. Those bonds store a lot of potential energy. But how ATP releases energy? When a cell needs energy, ATP is broken down by removing one phosphate group. In this process, energy is released, and the cell can use it for activities like muscle construction, transporting molecules across membranes, or building proteins. For example, sa love life. In this situation, ikaw yung magiging last one phosphate na tinatawag natin na kung saan ikaw yung bibitaw. Na kung saan ikaw ay mayroong boyfriend or girlfriend. And this time, napagod ka na sa relationship nyo. Bumitaw ka kasi kailangan na.
Pagod ka na! Ayaw mo na!
Pagod na ako!
Kung ito ay nagre-release ng energy, ito ay tinatawag na exergonic. But the story doesn't end there. ADP can be recharged back into ATP by adding a phosphate again, using energy from food and cellular respiration, or from sunlight in plants. This makes ATP like a rechargeable battery, constantly being used and recharged. Kagaya na lang ng story natin, hindi ibig sabihin na bumitaw ka, end of the world na. Bagamat bumitaw tayo sa past RS natin, nung bumalik naman tayo, ginamit natin yung mga lesson na natutunan natin sa past RS natin. And always remember, kapag nag-a-absorb ng energy, yun ay tinatawag na endergonic. O diba, kahit mga phosphate marupok din, kaya naman, sa lahat ng marupok dyan, hindi kayo nag-iisa. Hanggang sa susunod muli, paalam!
Oxidation and reduction of ATP and ADP. ATP or adenosine triphosphate, the structure of ATP. ATP is composed of adenosine molecule or adenine plus ribosome and three phosphate groups. The role of ATP. ATP is the primary energy currency of the cell, and the bonds between the phosphate groups are high energy bonds.
Hello guys, my assigned topic is ADP or adenosine diphosphate. What is ADP? ADP is a molecule that consists of adenine and ribose sugar and two phosphate group, and it is considered the lower energy form of ATP. When our cells needs energy, ATP loses one of its three phosphate groups and it becomes ADP. This release provides energy that the cells uses for important processes like muscle movement, active transport, and chemical reaction. A simple way to think about it is like a cell phone battery. ATP is a fully charged battery while ADP is a half one use. But the good thing is ADP can be recharged back into ATP using the energy we get from food.
Phosphorylation is a reaction which produces energy, also known as exergonic reaction. This is when a phosphate group is added to a molecule, like ADP turning into ATP. It usually releases energy, meaning it's an exergonic reaction. Think of it like charging a battery. Energy is being released and restored, while dephosphorylation is a reaction that requires energy. This is when a phosphate group is removed from a molecule, like ATP turning into ADP. It usually requires energy to happen, so it's an endergonic reaction. Think of it like using a battery. You need energy to break it apart. Phosphorylation is the cleavage of a phosphate group from ATP, which produces copious amounts of energy, which is utilized by metabolic activities of the cell, and leaves behind adenosine diphosphate and a lone phosphate group. ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, is like the cell's energy battery. It has three phosphate groups. When the last phosphate is broken off, it releases a lot of energy. This energy is then used to power things the cell needs to do, like moving, growing, or repairing. After losing one phosphate, ATP becomes ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. Now, it only has two phosphates. The free phosphate can later be reused to make ATP again.
And now let's move on what's happening to that phosphate that was removed on ATP. That phosphate called inorganic phosphate. When ATP broken down into ADP and PI, the energy released is immediately consumed by the cell. After that energy is used, the inorganic phosphate released by the target cell. Later, this PI is not wasted. It can be recycled by attaching again to ADP to form ATP. In short, the phosphate of group acts like a reusable piece that helps keep the cell cycle energy going.
Using energy produced from other metabolic activities, the lone phosphate group is reattached to ADP to form ATP again. And this creates the ADP and ATP cycle.
What are metabolic pathways? Metabolic pathways are series of interconnected biochemical reactions within a cell that convert a starting substance into a final product, involving enzymes to facilitate each step. They are broadly categorized into two types: anabolic pathways, which build complex molecules from simpler ones using energy, and catabolic pathways, which break down complex molecules into simpler ones, releasing energy. Together, these pathways provide the cell with the matter and energy necessary for life. Types of metabolic pathways. Catabolic pathways break down complex molecules into simpler ones, releasing energy. Example, glycolysis, where glucose is broken down to produce ATP. Anabolic pathways use energy to construct complex molecules from simpler ones. Example, photosynthesis, where plants use sunlight to create glucose from carbon dioxide and water. Apibolic pathways can function as both catabolic and anabolic pathways depending on the energy needs of the cell. Example, citric acid cycle Krebs cycle, which is involved in the both energy production and biosynthesis.
What are the energies released by the catabolic pathway? Catabolic pathway release energies in the form of number 1, ATP or adenosine triphosphate. This is the main usable energy currency of the cell. and it is produced during steps like glycolysis and Krebs cycle. Number 2, NADH and FADH2. This has a high energy electron carriers and it's also generated during catabolic process. This also donate electrons to the electron transport chain leading to ATP production. And last one is heat. Number 3 is heat. Some energy is also lost as heat, maintaining body temperature in warm-blooded organisms. Therefore, catabolic pathway release energy in the form of ATP, NADH, FADH2, and heat, which is also used to power various cellular processes, including anabolic pathways. Anabolic pathway consumption. Anabolic pathway consume energy ATP, reducing power NADPH, and small precursor molecules to synthesize complex macromolecules. They are essential for cell growth, repair, and maintenance.
Now, we will talk about the 7 key components of metabolic pathways. Starting with number 1, the substrates or reactants. This is the starting molecules. For example, is the glucose in glycolysis. Number 2 is the enzymes. These are the catalysts that speed up each step. Number 3 is the intermediates. These are the molecules formed between steps. Number 4 is the end products. This is the final output. For example, is pyruvate. Number 5, energy carriers. ATP, NADH, and FADH2 that store and transfer energy. Number 6, regulatory molecules. Activators or inhibitors that control the flow. Number 7 is the cofactors and coenzymes. This is the helper molecules like NAD+, CoA, and vitamins. Now, let's move on to the 4 types of regulations of metabolic pathways, starting with the first one, enzyme level regulation. We will only talk about the 3 types of enzyme level regulation, starting with the first one, allosteric regulation. Enzyme activity altered molecules by binding at regulatory sites. For example, is ATP inhibits PFK1 in glycolysis. Number 2 is feedback inhibition. End product blocks an early enzyme to prevent overproduction. For example, is isoleucine inhibits threonine deaminase. And last but not the least, number 3 is covalent modification. Enzymes turned on and off by phosphorylation, acetylation, and etc. For example, is glycogen phosphorylase activated by phosphorylation. Let's move on to the second type of regulation, genetic level regulation. Control of enzyme synthesis by turning genes on and off. For example, is lac operon regulates lactose metabolism. And now let's move on to the third type. Of regulation, which is cellular or structural regulation. Starting with the first one, compartmentalization. Pathways separated into organelles to avoid conflict. For example, is fatty acid oxidation or mitochondria versus synthesis or cytosol. For the second one is metabolite availability. Pathway speed depends on substrate or cofactor supply. Let's move on to the last regulation, which is whole body or hormonal regulation. Hormones coordinate metabolism across tissues. We will talk about the 3 types of hormones. We will only talk about 3. First one is insulin. Promotes glucose uptake and glycogen synthesis. Second one is glucagon. Promotes glycogen breakdown, and gluconeogenesis. And the third one is epinephrine. Stimulates fast energy release. And that's all.
At dahil tayo ang last na natitira, meron siyang major metabolic pathways gaya ng glycolysis, citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, electrotransport chain and oxidative phosphorylation, pentose phosphate pathway, and fatty acid and deoxidation. Ngayon, proceed tayo sa glycolysis. Glycolysis breaks down glucose in the cytosol to release energy. Number 2, citric acid or Krebs cycles. In mitochondria, it generates the electron carriers. Number 3, we have electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. Produces most of the cells in the adenosine triphosphate or ATP for short. Number 4, we have pentose phosphate pathway. Produces nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate or for short NADPH and ribose sugars for biosynthesis. For number 5, we have fatty acid biosynthesis and deoxidation. It builds and breaks down fats for energy. And for the last one, proceed naman tayo sa the interconnected web of the metabolism. Whoosh! Whoa! Ngayon, nandito na tayo sa interconnected web of metabolism. First, all metabolisms pathways are all linked together. Second, the product of one pathway can be the substrate for another. Number 3, discrete creates a network of catabolism and anabolism working together. Number 4, ensures the cells can adapt to different energy needs and resource availability. Overall, this interconnected system maintains homeostasis and supports life. Ngayon, dahil tapos na tayo, goodbye!